First off, I want to thank God, because if it weren't for God, each and every one of us wouldn't be here right now. And if it weren't for each and every fan that spent their hard-earned money to buy a ticket to see me fight, thank y'all, man. Houston, thank you, Houston. Yeah, we gonna come back here, baby. Love y'all, baby, for sure.
You just put a medal of appreciation around the neck of Juan. How much respect did he earn from you tonight with this performance?
It took a real warrior to get in the ring with me, and he fought each and every round hard as he could. I could tell in his eyes that, he was a true warrior from the beginning, and he wanted to fight. It don't matter what I hit him with, he go, come on. I love that spirit. And man, he gonna be great, man.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? Boy, I tell you, this year is full of surprises, ain't it? Jermall Charlo goes the distance with Montiel in what was a very entertaining, competitive fight. Very competitive fight, surprisingly. Now, you got to give Montiel a lot of credit. Even though Charlo won almost every single round, he won by unanimous decision. But the crazy thing is, even though Montiel lost almost every round in this fight, you could say that he actually hit Jermall Charlo more than any other fighter had ever hit Jermall Charlo. I mean, recently there's been so many fights where the underdog, who is perceived to have no chance going into the fight, ends up putting up a hell of a fight, surprising everyone, which is one of the reasons why I was really disappointed we didn't get to see the Teofimo Lopez versus Kambosos fight. That was the main fight I wanted to see this weekend because I felt it would be the most competitive. And if Lopez were able to beat Kambosos, then that would most likely set up a Lopez versus Devin Haney fight because of all of the money that DAZN was going to offer Teofimo Lopez. So once again, I thought that fight was going to be the most competitive. And the reason why I wasn't that crazy about watching the Charlo Montiel fight is because I thought this would be the least competitive. Turned out to be the contrary. This was the most competitive fight this weekend. But once again, you got to give Montiel a lot of credit because for those of you guys who don't know, he was knocked out by Jaime Munguia, and I believe it was in the first round, but that was at 147, right? Now, so going into this fight, most fans would automatically assume, man, if he got knocked out by Jaime Munguia, then this is going to be a first-round knockout for Jermall Charlo, right? But this is the thing about being knocked out. When fighters get knocked out for the first time, they either become better or they become worse. They either learn from being knocked out or, they always end up getting knocked out after that. All of a sudden now they just have that soft spot on their chin to where every time someone touches it, they instantly drop. For example, fighters like James Kirkland comes to mind. Amir Khan comes to mind. The first time these guys got knocked out, they were never the same. Roy Jones, right? But then you have other fighters like Tevin Farmer, who got knocked out and came back better. Manny Pacquiao came back better. And there's many other fighters like that. They came back better. Terry Norris, the great Terry Norris, had got knocked out in a vicious way. Came back to become pound for pound the best fighter in the world. So, people respond to being knocked out differently. And I think Montiel, he learned from being knocked out because a lot of people didn't really pay attention to it probably, but in this fight, Charlo was throwing a number of punches. In fact, I think they said he broke a record for how many punches he threw in this fight. But believe it or not, he was missing a lot of those punches he was throwing. And for some reason, Charlo didn't look nowhere near the same. He didn't look like Charlo in this fight. I don't know if it's the long layoff. I don't know. Or it could possibly be the fact that Montiel was sneaking in body shots and he started to walk forward and maybe he was walking down Charlo a little bit. I don't know which one it is, but this didn't look like Jermall Charlo. Just like coincidentally, the last Andrade fight didn't really look that much like Andrade. And that's why I tell you guys, this year is full of surprises. We've seen so many, A-level fighters or B-level fighters that were in there with underdogs and did not look like themselves. Or maybe they got hurt for the first time, like Devin Haney did. But that's different because Devin was stepping up in competition. These guys are fighting underdogs, real underdogs, So, yeah, there's been a lot of surprises this year. And yeah, I mean, Jermall Charlo, he didn't look anything like Jermall Charlo. He was getting hit too much. The way his head was getting snapped back every time he got hit, it just didn't look like him. It just didn't look like him. And I don't know how much we have to attribute that to Montiel. Montiel did good in this fight. And you got to remember, Montiel is very powerful. He's a very hard puncher. All of his wins was by knockout. So he has a 100% knockout ratio. And even though he got rocked a lot of times in this fight, he found ways to survive and he would rally back. And there were a couple times where it looked like he possibly hurt Jermall Charlo. So the bad news for Jermall Charlo was this was his worst performance, hands down. Matter of fact, this performance against Montiel makes the Korobov performance look like a good performance by Jermall Charlo. That's how bad this one was. So that's the bad news. But the good news is Canelo Alvarez is always fighting guys coming off of their worst performances, right? Means there's a better chance that now Jermall Charlo can actually get a Canelo Alvarez fight. So since this was a bad performance by Jermall Charlo, you Canelo Alvarez fans, you should be all on Canelo's Instagram, his Twitter, wherever, pushing him to take this fight because this is what Canelo does. He fights guys coming off of their worst performances, right? I mean, I can tell you right now, that Jermall Charlo that I just seen would actually lose to a Canelo Alvarez. But we have to see if this was just a bad performance or is this the new version of Jermall Charlo that we're going to always see. We don't know. It could possibly be just, the styles, him underestimating Montiel. Once again, Montiel was very powerful. And the funny thing I thought is when Montiel was moving around the ring, he was actually more dangerous because you got a guy who's moving around and you never know when he's going to throw a punch, and this guy has a high knockout ratio, a very high knockout ratio. It wasn't until he came forward where he kind of started making it a little bit easier for Jermall. But later on in the fight, all of a sudden it looked like all those punches, that record that he broke, Jermall Charlo, actually is what possibly gassed him out, throwing all those punches. And while he was throwing all those punches, during the second half of the fight, a lot of times Montiel was walking him back. He was kind of walking him down, and he was landing some good body shots. They both were, but Montiel was definitely landing some good body shots and head shots on Jermall Charlo. Now listen, I know Canelo Alvarez is trying to unify all the belts at 168. He wants to fight Caleb Plant next. Assuming he gets that fight or he doesn't get that fight, Canelo Alvarez would be a fool not to take the Jermall Charlo after that performance, because you obviously want to be the first man to beat whoever is undefeated. Someone who's been chasing Canelo for 6 years, this is the man that forced Canelo Alvarez to vacate his belt at 160 and retreat to 168, where the champions are easier to beat and it's easier to become undisputed. This is Canelo's perfect opportunity to go after Charlo. Once again, assuming he either gets past Caleb Plant or the fight doesn't happen. It would make absolutely no sense for you to allow someone else, like a Montiel or some other no-name fighter, someone who doesn't have a big name, to go in there and beat a Jermall Charlo. You want a win like that on your resume, especially if Canelo Alvarez could beat a Jermall Charlo with no controversy. Now, once again, I don't know if Canelo can beat him, but I know, once again, that version of Jermall Charlo, if Canelo Alvarez was able to walk down Jermall Charlo and do what Montiel was able to do, he would beat him. But styles make fights. And once again, this is why the fights have to happen. We don't know how these fights are going to play out until we watch them, because no one expected Charlo versus Montiel to go the distance and be a competitive fight. That's why we have to have the fights. So there's a very good chance that when Charlo or if Charlo gets an opportunity to fight Canelo, we're going to see a sharp Charlo. We're not going to see this version of Charlo, right? So that's why the fights have to happen. And you guys keep hearing me talking about how Canelo could possibly beat Charlo because he can. But at the same time, if we get the version of Charlo that knocked out Julian J. Rock Williams, there's a possibility he can win as well. But at the end of the day, I don't care if it was a foregone conclusion that Canelo will win the fight. We still have to see the fights to really see, who is the best from 160 to 168. I mean, Jermall Charlo and Demetrius Andrade are the same thing to Canelo that Tank Davis and Devin Haney is to a Teofimo Lopez. The only difference is Andrade and Charlo have been chasing Canelo for almost 7 years now. So yeah, it would be really foolish for Canelo Alvarez to give someone else an opportunity to become the first person to beat Charlo. I mean, after the Caleb Plant fight, there are no other options for Canelo, at least no real options, except for David Benavidez, Demetrius Andrade, and Jermall Charlo. Those are the only fights that will make sense after Canelo gets past Caleb Plant, or if that fight doesn't happen, right? Now, I wouldn't be surprised if Canelo, he surprises everyone and goes after Gabe Rosado, but no one really wants to see that fight. These are the fights that people want to see. On top of that, Charlo is a huge draw. He's a huge draw in Texas. We know Canelo with the Mexican fan base in Texas, and the fact that Jermall Charlo can fill up an arena in Texas, that alone tells us he's a big draw. But let's also not forget that when Jermall Charlo and his brother, Jermall, when they fought on the same cards, they did like some of the biggest views of the year. Matter of fact, that card I'm referring to, when Charlo fought Harrison, Jermall fought Harrison, and Jermall fought Korobov. That was like the biggest card, or one of the biggest cards of the year in terms of revenue and TV ratings, right? So it makes all the sense in the world. So there's no reason for Canelo not to take this fight. I mean, if you Canelo Alvarez fans truly believe that Canelo completely washes Jermall Charlo, you felt that same way when Canelo was going to fight Rocky Fielding, right? You felt that same way when Canelo was going to fight Smith, unless you're going to tell us that you think or you thought Rocky Fielding had a chance to beat Canelo. We know that's not the case. So the question is simple. If you knew Canelo was going to beat these guys easy going in, then why hasn't Canelo fought Jermall Charlo? When you also say, let you tell it, you believe Canelo beats him easy. Apparently, Canelo hasn't felt that way. He might feel a little different after watching this performance, because once again, this is usually when Canelo licks his chops. When he sees extreme flaws, when he sees a poor performance, that's usually when he changes his tune. This is exactly what Canelo did with Billy Joe Saunders. When Billy Joe Saunders looked sensational against David Lemieux, Canelo said, I don't like his style. That's exactly what he said. He said, I'm not interested in that fight. I don't like his style. Then all of a sudden, BJ, he looks horrible in his last two performances, and Canelo, he starts licking his chops, and he says, I want that. I want that Billy Joe Saunders now, right? Let's see what he says about Charlo after this performance. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one. All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, then this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called LO Deki Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to lodeki.com. Like them on Facebook and follow them on Instagram.
Hello, my name is Dominic. I just got my procedure done here at Scalp Carolinas. I was recommended by Dante's Boxing Nation, and it's real. Here's the results. The brother out here, Brother Enoch, is real, and it's a very, very, very good recommendation. I recommend it. 4 hours, you in, you out, and it's the rest of your life.
So if anyone in the world wants this hookup, make sure you contact my man Enoch at 704-499-3471 and make sure to follow him on Instagram.